folks, if we can get it, because I just find it absolutely extraordinary. This is it right here. This is the moment. Yahya Sinwar, that's him right there. You just caught the end of it, but it's going to loop around again. We'll play it for you. So this building had been bombed. The drone is flying in with the camera mounted to it, sitting in the chair there. Somehow, after all of that, Yahya Sinwar is still sitting there. He's got an object in his hand. I don't know what it is, but it is perhaps a last act of defiance that he tosses it at the drone with the camera mounted to it. And then not long after that, Yahya Sinwar is killed. That vision has been provided by the IDF this morning. And on that note, let's bring in Jonathan Conricus, former IDF spokesperson, senior fellow at Foundation for Defence of Democracies. He's on this program a fair bit. Jonathan, good to see you this morning. So just on that news that Yahya Sinwar's been taken out, what do you make of it?
Well, good morning. For me, and I think for other people who love getting justice served to terrorists wherever they are around the world, it's a good day. I'm happy that Yahya Sinwar met his fate. The video that you showed is him after he covered his face in an attempt not to be identified by Israeli soldiers, and he chucked a piece of wood towards the drone because he didn't want the drone to film him and to reveal who he is. That's after the first round from an Israeli tank hit the building where he was, and that's after Israeli soldiers, by the way, not special forces and not Mossad agents with exploding beepers, but ordinary, what you would call grunts and tank soldiers, spotted enemy activity, and it was Yahya Sinwar and his close bodyguards going from one location to another, engaged them, and then sent the drone in to check on the battle damage, saw that he was still alive, fired again, and then the other pictures that I'm sure that we will see as well is Israeli soldiers standing over his body amidst the rubble of what was left of the building. But so, beyond... Yeah.
Sorry, Jonathan. Yeah, there's so many questions I've got to you, and that's really interesting data that or detail that you've given us there. So was that his actual home, or was that someone else's home?
No, that was another hideout that Yahya Sinwar used. He basically alternated locations in a very disciplined way. Most of the time he spent underground, and apparently he resurfaced occasionally, maybe for communication purposes, maybe for other purposes. But at the end of the day, he was very disciplined. And, you know, the fact that Israel didn't have intel on that he was there and that Israel didn't know that we had, in fact, taken out Yahya Sinwar and only regular troops indicates how well he concealed his steps. And again, you know, I want to be honest here. Israel was fortunate. I've said it in the past that Yahya Sinwar and other terrorists, they have to be lucky every time in order to get away from Israeli attempts. And we only have to be lucky once.
Wow.
And I think that Israel caught a lucky break here.
Wow. So that's extraordinary. So you didn't even know he was there. So let me get this right. You got tanks that rolled towards this building and just started firing on it. And just as it turned out, Yahya Sinwar was there.
No, the tanks were called in for support because infantry soldiers were there on patrol. They saw suspicious activity of armed enemy combatants, which was Yahya Sinwar and his entourage. And then they called on the tank to fire a few rounds towards the house. And then it was understood. And it's basically because of the soldiers, when they went in, they said, this guy looks familiar. Maybe this is Yahya Sinwar. Wow. And apparently after DNA examination, it was established that it was indeed Yahya Sinwar. And this may be an important and historic day for Israel and for Gaza.
It just reminds me, I know it's a long bow to draw here, it reminds me of Saddam Hussein when he was brought out of the tunnel network in Iraq many years ago. I know it's a little different, but just finding the leader of a group here like this is just extraordinary. Now, when these things usually happen, Jonathan, there's a head of the snake that grows back usually. So who's it going to be? Does Hamas just continue?
So Hamas are in a tough situation. They are not organized well now. A lot of the power was centralized in the hands of Yahya Sinwar. He focused many of the capabilities around him, which isn't a good thing to do when you're in a risk of being killed. And they're in a bit of it'll be a rough transition. I think, of course, Hamas will survive this and they will bounce back to some extent. The former political leader, Khalid Mash'al, enjoying life at large in Qatar for the last few years and accumulating quite a lot of money there as well. He has now assumed the interim political leadership of Hamas, and he will bear the responsibility for the situation, which, by the way, is interesting because that, of course, gives a new address for the US and for Israel to negotiate with, hopefully in order to get the hostages back. And I think that is what Israel will be focusing on in the immediate aftermath of the elimination of Sinwar, to get a deal, to get the hostages back, to have Hamas surrender and understand that continued fighting is futile and it won't bring anything good about. And if they bring over the hostages and come out and surrender, then the Hamas leaders will be given some kind of immunity from being killed by Israel. And hopefully they will take this. I don't know if Hamas will have the wisdom to do so. I hope so, for Israelis, for Palestinians, for Gaza, for the region. I hope that they will do so. But if they don't, Israel will be ready to continue to fight.
Jonathan Conricus with a lot of new detail there. Good to chat to you this morning, Jonathan. Really appreciate it. Thanks for staying awake for us.
Thank you and good morning.
Getting close to 1 o'clock in the morning in Tel Aviv. But thanks again, Jonathan.